Good evening. My name is Vince Noblet, President of the Speedway Redevelopment Commission. I want to call to order our regular session for the Speedway Redevelopment Commission. Today is February 15th, 2016. First, I'll start off as a roll call. Ron Fisher.
Here.
Bill Jones.
Here.
Allison Duncan.
Here.
Also in attendance is Ian Nicolini, our town manager. Dr. Terry Reed is here representing the school board. Tim Jensen, President of Veritas Corporation. And also in the audience is Councilor Gary Rakes. Thanks, Gary, for coming. Next on the agenda is approval of December 21st, 2015 regular session minutes. These minutes have been distributed. If there's no changes or corrections, we'll approve them as received. Hearing none, they're approved. Next is approval of the December 28th, 2015 executive session minutes. These minutes have been previously distributed. If there's no changes or corrections, we'll approve them as submitted. Hearing none, they're approved. Next is approval of the December 28th special session minutes. These minutes have been distributed. If there's no changes or corrections, we'll approve them as submitted. Hearing none, they're approved. Next is approval of the January 11th Joint Town Council Redevelopment Commission executive session. These minutes have been distributed. If there's no changes or corrections, they will be approved as submitted. Hearing none, they're approved. Next is approval of the January 18th regular session minutes. These minutes have been distributed to, and if there's no changes or corrections, they will be approved as submitted. They're approved. Next is approval of February 5th special session minutes. These minutes have been distributed. If there's no changes or corrections, they'll be approved as submitted. Hearing none, they're approved. Next is the approval of the February 5th executive session minutes. These minutes have been submitted. If there's no changes or corrections, they will be approved as submitted. Hearing none, they're approved. And I think that catches us up to date. Right, Alice?
Yep.
Okay, we're good.
It does.
Next, I would like to open up for public comment to anybody that would like to speak to the commission tonight. Come forward. Just, we know who you are, Chuck, but you can state it for public.
I'll state it for the record since
Okay, good.
proper
Thank you.
procedure and all kinds of good things. My name is Charles Bennett, 4934 West 15th Street. And I know usually you guys like to just take the questions and then get back to me at some point in time with what I have. So I was just here concerning the Wilshaw project. I just had a few concerns and some questions I wanted to ask. I know after watching last month's meeting, I know Ian mentioned that there was a possibility of creating that as a separate TIF district within a TIF district. So it was all SZ1 and all SZ2 a TIF district in and of itself. Is all the entire property a TIF district? And then how do you go about creating a TIF district within a TIF district? Is that, tried to do some research and couldn't find it, so I knew Ian had made mention of that last month.
Yeah, it is it will be itself a separate TIF district. In other words, any taxes or.
Well, I understand how that works.
We'll be on that, will be separately.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
I would like to make clarification for the record, though. It's not a TIF district within a TIF district. It's actually been removed from the TIF district so as to create a single parcel TIF district.
Okay, so not within.
Right.
Okay. Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Also, too, I just didn't, my other questions were about the hotel portion of it, going back to even all the way back to the master plan, how that fit in with what was in the master plan, what was taken in from public comment. Then also, too, I guess in the SZ1 special zoning, I didn't know if there's ever any mention made of a hotel and/or any accommodations for that. I know the Redevelopment Commission also had the Urban Land Institute study in 2008 that was done that suggested, they talked about IMS possible expansion and doing a museum/entertainment/hotel as well. So I don't know if the IMS is still planning on doing that, if there's 2 hotels that could be even sustained in that area. I know you guys also did an economic impact analysis in 2009 where they specifically recommended that north of 16th Street, you put a new hotel with integrated conference center, a new theme restaurant, relocation or expansion of the IMS Hall of Fame Museum. So I didn't know if they were going to do that as well. I just was concerned about how many hotels are
An
going to be down there,
oversaturation.
of hotels. I also saw where it was going to be 5 stories tall. I wasn't sure in the SZ1, I think it was 4 stories. Again, I know Ian made reference to the fact that there will be special zoning hearings if need be for variances of that nature. So I
Mr.
didn't
President?
know if that was going to be one of them.
All approval petitions in the SC1 are subject to public hearing.
Right.
Any use.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
And I am glad to see there's a parking garage going down there, so I'm not sure. I mean, the 500 spaces, that's great. I'm just not sure about the 5 stories. So that was it. So.
I know that this commission has been concerned about, this elimination of a lot of motel room keys that have been eliminated from Speedway, from that standpoint. And also the fact is that the quality that we're replacing the Dollar Inn, the Budget Inn, the Red Roof Inn, Motel 6, all those are low-end motels that have been eliminated from Speedway. And this commission is very concerned about the quality and the upscale structure of any hotel that would be in. We're still working on the terms of condition, working through the process, but from a preliminary, when we reviewed their proposal, it is based on high-end condos, high-end apartments, high-end hotel rooms, limited number of keys, and from that standpoint, just to give you an upfront.
Oh, I didn't doubt that we're spending that much money on the building and the development, and that it would be a motel. I was just curious as to all the things that said put it north of 16th Street. I didn't know if IMS was still planning on trying to put some type of, because I know at one time the drawings, the renderings, the master plan was to have a hotel conference center located where the old hotel was. So I just didn't know.
I don't know what their plans are in relationship to where they're going in the future. From that standpoint, I know is that the developer in this commission realizes the fact that we do need places for people to stay, especially for those that would be visiting the IMS, but also from Allison's standpoint and Praxair. They have to put their people downtown right now. And, that's what they've been telling us. We relayed that to the developers, and they totally agree. I mean, they're the ones that came in with that proposal. We thought it was a very good idea from that. Anything else, Chuck?
Nope, not tonight. Thank you.
Hey,
Appreciate it.
Anybody else would like to speak to the commission tonight? We'll move on. Next would be a review from Tim Jensen, Fairness Group. And Ian, you can feel free to jump in on anything.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's several things on our list for the commission tonight. I think we're going to save the project-specific ones till we get to the development projects here a little bit later in the agenda. So tonight I wanted to start with the Big Woods invoice that you guys asked us to review, to walk through that just briefly. You should have received that memorandum sometime this week. I sent it to Vince.
Yes.
And it got out to the group. So bottom line, and I have it here for you guys to review if you want. So again, the question that came up at the last month's meeting was an invoice that came from McGovern Construction in the amount of $12,131.61. Ian and I met with all the parties on site, reviewed all the invoices and paperwork that was associated with this. We believe at the end of the day, the commission is only responsible for $9,281.52.
Okay.
And this was confirmed by Mr. McGovern in an email. When I sent him our findings, he said, yes, I agree with that. And if the commission could approve that, that would help us out. So that should resolve that issue from
Okay.
last time.
And just to let everybody aware, that was concerning what?
It was concerning bad soils on the Big Woods site at 10th and Main,
Okay.
down the street.
Compaction issues.
Compaction issues.
Right. Okay.
Yep. So that is one. Is there any questions on that I can answer for anybody?
No.
Okay. Number two, I wanted to talk about the economic development process, which is this 11 by 17 diagram that we have created, that Ian and I created. So as Ian and I meet every week to talk about SRC and town business and how we're working out economic development projects as we get different inquiries throughout the week and how we handle these, it became clear that in the past, there's not been a real clear process, which gives you guys a lot of touch points, and a lot of decisions were being made potentially without the commission acting on it as a group, right? And so what Ian and I set to lay out was a process by which the commission, through this economic development process, would have multiple touch points or go, no-go decisions by the commission. These could be in regular session meetings, they could be in special session meetings, and if they're negotiating real estate, I mean, they could be in executive session meetings. So, but again, to put all this back onto the SRC's plate so that you guys can be the decision makers in the party and give Ian and I the correct marching orders as we go. So I could start by saying this is a draft copy. We're interested in your guys' opinions and to what this is, but Ian and I spent a good hour or two last week just kind of developing the steps that are associated with it, and as you can see, there's 10 easy steps to this, right? So it's very, very simplified process, but to walk you through it and kind of step by step here, number one, I don't need to read all this for you, but number one is the initial meeting. That's going to be, in all cases, 2 representatives. So if it's Ian and myself, or maybe it's Vince and myself, or somebody, there's going to be representation there for 2 different people, as if at all possible. So that invitation can go out to any one of the SRC members, or all of them, and somebody can choose to show up. All right. So number 2, there'll be a viability determination. And there's a little bit of, if you look on the bottom left over there, you'll see a little bit greater detail of the box itself. So number 2 is the viability of the project. So we're going to make an initial determination of the viability. We're going to bring you that information to the SRC, and that's when you see the first no-go or go decision by the SRC there in the red and green.
Yeah.
So if it's a no-go right away, you'll see right to the side that there's a letter that's going to be issued. We'll issue a letter to that interested party saying the SRC's reviewed it and this is not something that fits within the master plan, or whatever the reason is that we're not moving forward with that. Okay. And not to go through the whole thing, but as you go down this line, you'll see that if it gets past that first one, we go to terms, same thing, no go, go. Goes to a letter of intent, goes to an EDA. We talk about the budget in here, both the cost of the SRC and the cost of the incentives, or all the different incentives that go into it, whether it's a bond budget and those things get approved. Financing, TIF bonds, abatement, all the different things that are available. Then again, it goes to the SRC for a go, no go. Again, this could fall apart, the deal could fall apart here. Again, send a letter, so a formalized letter saying that this deal is no longer in discussion and we're going to move on with the next party, or whatever the case is. Going up the ladder now, number 8, we would close the deal, which would be the closing of the real estate, the closing of the bond transaction, all of those different things. And then 9 and 10 would be construct, or do the construction side, the groundbreaking, the permits and approvals, the pre-construction meeting as the town. And then 10, which we're going to hear about a little bit on the Crawfordsville Road Partners project, is verify the quantities, confirm, make sure all the stuff that's in line with the process of the bond and whatever public assistance has been given.
Ian, do you think, that we should have a vote at those junction points?
So a lot of these are actual public policy items. I mean, we try to just kind of keep it simple so that you would just sort of have a red light, green light steps along the way. But anytime it's a public policy. So the approval of economic development agreements, the approvals of financings, the adoption of requests for proposal submittals, all of those are items that would require public meeting action.
Okay.
So the one thing this chart does not necessarily put out there is the RFP process, which we will work into this, which we're going to talk a little bit more about tonight as we get into development projects. But it would fit along with this, right? So once we receive the proposals, then it goes into number 2, the viability, and we just kind of work the process down.
Right. Right.
We just didn't want to have 11 steps.
Right.
Anything, keep it simple.
It's bad luck.
Yeah.
So the idea here is to formalize the process a little bit so that I think it protects the commission in many ways so that nobody can claim, hey, we didn't get the same shake that somebody else got, right?
Right.
So again, our idea is to minimize risk for the commission, and as we look into future developments and learning from past projects and all the different things, we're trying to put all this together so that we can say, look, you guys have had 3 or 4 chances before we ever got to the deal for you guys as the policymakers to make the decisions on whether we move forward or not move forward. And again, it really takes it out of staff level just driving some specific project forward or kicking one to the side at that point. So everybody gets to see it and gets to decide what that is. So the top gray bar at the top is an estimated timeline. I don't want anybody to hang their hat on this by any imagination. As we know, as we get into bond counsel, attorneys, different things, and timelines happen. But I think what's important to see, especially for the community and developers, because developers crave predictability. Right, that's what they want in a process. They don't mind the cost if they know what the cost is. They just don't want to be surprised. They don't mind the timeline if they know what the timeline is. They don't want to be surprised. And so we want to create a pro-development. This is the Redevelopment Commission. We want to create a pro-development environment. And so understanding there's a timeline that's kind of set forth that if you look at this, your first decision from the day one, from day 0 you'd be looking at this within a month of the first sit down. Right, and then again another month would get us to the next one if we were to negotiate terms, and then all of a sudden you starts to go a little bit longer here as we get into the more detailed discussions and bond associations and whatnot. And there's a place in here on number 3. This would be the first place that you guys would determine if legal counsel and or financial advisors or bond counsel is appropriate to be hired at that point. So there's steps all along the way that give you guys the freedom to do that.
Okay. So can we incorporate this in? I know Wilshaw has already started, from that standpoint, but I think it would be good to make sure that we follow what we say we're going to do, and from that end, at least to start with this. And I know we were already well underway with that project, but we still got a long ways to go.
So I would say that the Wilshaw, yes, to answer your question,
Yeah.
yes, we will implement this with Wilshaw. We've already informed them that there's a process coming, that they're going to be the first ones to walk through with us. They've gone through an LOI. Mm-hmm. However, we are now renegotiating terms, so we're kind of going back to number 3. Then there'll probably be another LOI that comes before you guys.
Right.
After the terms come before you guys, before we go to the EDA.
Okay.
So, are there any questions on this? Anybody have any thoughts or changes you want to see as a commission?
No, I want to thank you. I mean, this is very good. You guys putting something structured-wise that, not only the commission can see it, the council can understand where we're at in the process. Gary, you got a copy of it? I see you over there? Okay.
I got one question. We have legal, bond, and financial relationships currently, and I assume you bear this as our construction expertise relationship for 9 and 10. Is that?
Well, we are acting in that capacity now, but if the commission ever wanted to go out for additional quotes, that's absolutely fine. We're here to represent the commission.
But you're acting as that now. You're
Correct.
currently, because you're about to go into that. You said, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that on one other project.
But there's a lot of staff involvement too in the construction steps as well. Building
Right.
commissioner, utilities, all of that as well are all handled by town staff.
Okay.
So if there's nothing further on the economic development process, the last thing I don't have a handout for you in this one. So Ian and I are working on, and we're going to probably talk about it a little bit more tomorrow, is we're calling it our 30-day, our 90-day, and our 180-day kind of task list for the SRC and what we're trying to accomplish over those next intervals. So real quick for your benefit, number 1, we want to finalize this. We want to finalize this economic development process. So if you have any input on it, please email us or call us or come meet with us, whatever it is, so we can finalize this. We're going to try and seek some council feedback on it, but really this is the SRC's document, so
Right.
we want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with it. Number 2, there's some steps in here that there's going to be some formality created as part of the step, whether that's a form created or a questionnaire or something that the developer and or interested party is going to have to fill out. We want to get those done and in front of you probably at the next meeting in March so that you guys can approve those forms and we can begin using all of those things. We'll have basic templates set up for the letter of intent and for the term sheets. And so we're not always using the different attorneys and different people's stuff. We'll use best practices and come up with those forms.
Okay.
So that's number 2. Number 3 on our list, really, and I think Mr. Fisher is going to be assisting us with this, is really compiling the property list of everything the SRC owns and where it is in status, whether it's had an RFP issued on it, where it's been legal noticed, and so we can have a running track list, or tracking list of every project or every piece of property that you guys own, so that every week we can talk about the disposition of that property, where it sits, what the process is, and where we are in the process, and we can get good marching orders.
Yes.
And then the last thing in the next 30 days that we want to move into here in just a second is really issuing the RFPs specifically for a couple different projects, which we'll bring up here momentarily.
Okay, great. Any questions for Tim? No, thanks for bringing that to us. It's definitely a good structure to follow. Next on our agenda is a review from the London Witty Group. Bob? Thanks for coming.
Sure. Mr. President, members of the commission, my name's Bob Swintz with the London Witty Group. A couple weeks ago, we met with Ian and Tim and the clerk treasurer to talk about some of the issues facing the commission in terms of finances and being able to generate information that would be useful for you, things that you can use in your management, especially as Tim was talking about future projects, how that all plays in together. You should all have a copy of what we're calling our financial information packet. And I don't want you to focus so much on the numbers right now. We've spent a week or so trying to accumulate as much information and getting it into a format that we think is helpful. We've not had time yet to go through and double check all the numbers, making sure everything's okay. But what we really wanted to do tonight was to show you a format, have you take a look at it, and if there's additional information you want, give us that feedback. We'll incorporate it if there's things in here you don't think are helpful, but we're trying to develop this for your use. I think what I'd like to do, Jennifer Hudson from our office is here, maybe just kind of go through the pages and briefly tell you what each page represents and what we're trying to do there. And if you have any questions afterwards, certainly answer those questions.
Sure. I mean, this is, just from looking at the first monthly actual and forecast, I'd love to have that to see where we're at.
You want? She does all the work. So.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Exhibit A will be our monthly review of financials. So we'll go month by month. We'll get a copy of a list of all the invoices that the commission pays each month. I will work with the auditor's office to get Form 22, so we'll see when property taxes are coming in and be able to fill in the rest of this chart to see when cash is going to come in, and work with Ian and Monty to get invoices, so we'll know on a monthly basis what is recurring expenses as well as expenses that are just going to come up due to projects. The next Exhibit B is a forecast for the next 5 years. So based off of your current projections of revenues, as well as filling in your annual debt service, it shows how you will, if everything continues the way that it is and you don't get any more TIF revenues, or if there are projects that you know that are going to roll on, we can increase the TIF revenues to reflect that. But this just kind of gives you a forecast of, if you continue at the pace that you're going, what your financial situation will look like.
Okay.
Okay? But we have not filled in 2015 yet, so that's why it's all kind of red. So bear with us while we're still trying to get information. Exhibit C is, it's going to be more probably helpful for myself, but it kind of gives you a history of your allocation areas, the expansions that have been done, the date when they were put into effect, when they're going to expire. It looks like the information that we've received from the auditor's office so far has combined a lot of the information into 3 separate funds. So when the TIF revenues come in, they're just kind of lumping them all together, when in fact each of these expansions has their own expiration, and so we need to figure out what parcels are going with which expansion, which area, to know which AV is gonna roll off when. So we can kind of gauge that a little bit better as we go forward. So that's going to be something that we're going to focus on. We want to go back and review all the parcels that are showing right now in the allocation areas with the county and make sure that they are accurate based off of the resolutions that were approved at the time the allocation areas were created. Make sure all the parcels are there, and then we can kind of identify which allocation area they're actually a part of. Exhibit D is gonna get updated, obviously, once we get the Pay 16 information for the incremental assessed value. I know that Marion County just got the, they should be getting their budget order anytime now. So we'll be able to update this with Pay 16 information. I have highlighted one of the, property tax collections. I show it at 92%, and I just want to go back and look into that and see what was going on there. So you'll see some highlights in there, and it's reminding me I need to go back and look at things.
Sure.
We on Exhibit E, this is a snapshot of some of the information concerning your outstanding debt. I've been working with bond counsel to get some of the legal documents, which is why the repayment source is highlighted. Once I get that information, I'll be able to fill that in. But generally, it shows how much you originally issued, how much is outstanding, an average interest rate, when the bonds are callable, and when they're going to roll off.
Good, that's great.
And then beyond that are the amortization schedules as well as a summary of the debt, just so you can see on an annual basis how your debt ramps up and then it levels off in about 5 years. So as Bob mentioned, if there are things that you all would like to see added to the analysis, feel free to let us know.
Right.
We plan to provide it on a monthly basis if possible.
So
if you
all your data is coming from the assessor's office, correct?
assessor's office and the auditor's office.
And the auditor's office from that standpoint. So how do you know if let's say that Allison's just, took a tax abatement, or let's say that they put in additional equipment, not to pick on them, but anybody from that standpoint, but, and how that affects, as far as our forecast and where we're going from that standpoint. Are you reliant on Ian to get you that information, or what's the trigger point?
I'm actually gonna work with the auditor's office to find out what the current abatements that have been approved that are out there. I do not have that information yet.
Okay.
So I'll get a list of those from the county. But as new abatements are approved, then I would be relying on Ian or Monty to get me the schedules.
Or as if we bring in other capital improvements on the buildings and things like that, those are just the same as if abatements were approved from
Right.
that standpoint. 'Cause I know a lot of that have taken place within, companies, Main Street and town in the
Sure.
areas. From that standpoint. And if it's not, I'd like to see when it's coming online, at that point in time.
Yep.
So that we can forecast from that standpoint.
Okay,
Okay?
for sure.
Did Crow have any of this information?
They have provided some of the information. Some of the documents that I'm waiting on specifically are bond documents that they haven't been able to provide. So I've gone to legal counsel to get that information, just so I can verify the amounts in the debt, because that's sort of being pulled just from official statements. So I like to have the authorizing documents, the final documents for that.
Did they not have red flags when new assessments were coming up? When Praxair put in a new machine, or?
I think that's what we need to check into that. to
You
find
know,
out what
Ian?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
When I see a big truck come down Main Street with a big machine on it coming in, I'm figuring we're gonna get a tax off of it. Is there any red flags in place that we know the machines are coming in?
They do have to claim that as personal. Yeah, they do have to claim their personal property. But in Indiana, the system by which you do that is kind of a self-reported system. But yes, that is a requirement of Indiana tax code.
So I'm gonna have to be watching Main Street, big trucks all the time.
You and me both, man.
So that in the building, they have to apply for a building permit, right? If they're doing any changes or in structure and.
Yeah,
sort of
typically, but not necessarily all personal property would require a building permit. The vast majority of it would, but I could
On personal property.
envision
Corporate-
scenarios where.
on Physical property, we can get the building permits, we'll see that, but on machineries and things like that.
'Cause
Okay.
typically it'll require, electric service or gas or something else. All those things require permits. The process of verifying it is really where we need to step up.
Who does that? Who
We're going to handle
verifies?
that at the staff level, and that'll probably be a separate project with your FAs, your financial advisors.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Or-
are you gonna advise us, Exhibit B, I don't wanna talk about right now, but, Exhibit, E. We have several bonds here at 7%, 6.07. As you being our counsel or advisor, should we refinance those?
Well, one of them you're getting a tax credit on. So I believe that was the 2010 lease rental bonds. We most certainly can look into it. There are some strange provisions that's not a normal bond refinancing. There's some extraordinary redemption terms that we have to.
Prepayment penalties?
Exactly. There's some
I'm trying to
make
reduce it
whole
down to
and
simple terms.
right. Yeah. So that one, I know for sure that there's some redemption issues. But as far as the taxable lease rental, the 2009 A-2 bonds, we could look into refinancing it. It does have a longer maturity, but there's not a whole lot. It's only $1.2 million. So that is something that we'd have to keep in mind is how much we're going to actually pick up doing
Right.
a refining.
Ron, Bob, and I have kind of gone back on that, though, with some underwriters to look at what options we have available. They've been going back and forth verifying that information.
Well, I think the current bondholder would even refinance, consider that if he thought we were gonna pay it off. Because a couple of these bonds were bought internally by persons.
A private placement?
Yes.
And that's what, when we get the bond documents and know if they were privately placed and figure out who bought the bonds, that would help us in that analysis.
As you go through this, whatever you see, I mean, all you do is keep the highlighter going. And absolutely work with Ian and work with the commission to keep us informed. I just don't want reports. I want to have a value-added
Yep.
analysis brought to us so that we can stay on top of it and keep on moving from there. And I'm sure that's what your plan is from that standpoint. So how often, this is monthly, does that make sense, Bob, or what?
We do this for commissions around the state, and different commissions have different needs. I think we do a cash flow for county commission every month. Another commission, we would provide something like this on a quarterly basis. Ian and I talked, and I think maybe we talked a little bit about, to begin with, maybe we would do this on a monthly basis.
Right.
To make sure we're getting everything covered, make sure everybody understands what's going on, and then if we back it off to quarterly, we could do that.
That's
But
it. Yeah,
it's
that's-
gonna be at your discretion.
As long as it's, it is of value to the commission, absolutely. I want to get our handle on this and clearly understand what is being presented to us from that standpoint so that we can continue to make sound decisions for.
Based on our initial conversation with Ian and Tim, there is a lot out there, a lot that we don't have in here yet. We talked about creating a balance sheet, which would include not only your cash, but a listing of all your property. So I think that would get incorporated into this report as well. We obviously only have the bond liabilities here. You may have other liabilities that we'll want to identify and
Sure.
keep track of.
Good.
I hope
Any other questions for him? Thank you very much. We'll look forward to your input. We'll move on to infrastructure project updates. Ian, you want to?
Mr. President, if it's all right, Tim and I can kind of tag team
Okay.
12 and 13 together.
good.
I'll try and cover what I've got, and if I miss anything, Tim will chime in. Tim kind of mentioned earlier when we were talking about the economic development process that we're drafting requests for proposal documents for 3 properties that the commission owns. 23 acres at High School Road in Crawfordsville, which we're calling 2500 High School, for simplicity's sake. We're also drafting requests for proposals to purchase 1346 Main Street and 1426 Main Street, 2 buildings that are owned by the commission. And those processes, basically what we'll do is we'll put the information out. There's a public process that's required to go through, an advertisement process that we're required to follow to gauge the amount of interest and determine whether or not we can achieve fair market value or greater than fair market value for the acquisition of those properties. And depending on the level of detail in the proposal or the final version of the request for proposals, the proposed end user development, or at least proposed end uses, as it were. So, you know, we're waiting on appraisals because we have to have established fair market value in order to be able to put those documents out. So we think we're 2-3 weeks away from having that. That's really kind of filling in the last few blanks. You've got a copy from Tim Jensen on the request for proposals for 2500 High School, and I just put the finishing touches on 1426 Main Street this afternoon. So we still need to review those before they go out. But it's very similar to the process that you guys went through to develop 1559 Main Street.
So we'll have a standardized system then for proposals.
The process is, you know, we're kind of talking about 2 different types of properties, right?
Right.
If it's a redevelopment of an existing business or existing building, I should say, versus development of raw land, you may be looking to evaluate proposals on different characteristics.
Right.
So, but as far as form and function, that's correct. More or less a template, a pro forma, if you will.
I think it's important, you know, I mean, the commission, one of the main reasons that we purchase property and is not only, you know, to control it, is to make sure that its future development is basically in compliance with the plan and what the community wants to see go in. So whatever we need to do.
Well, that sort of gets back to some of the evaluative criteria that's included in the economic development process that we've outlaid.
Right.
You know, is it really, you've got a chance to have both the objective standards, right? Did they finance the development? Is it enough? Does it comply with the plan? And then the subjective measures that look at things like how well does it fit? Does it make sense as an end user? How does it complement other development opportunities and things like that? So, yes, that's correct. You sort of have both bases covered by going through this process. You're looking at the quantitative price proposal as well as the qualitative development or end use proposal.
Absolutely.
This one that we're looking at, page 2.
Which one are you looking at? Are you
This
looking
one
at
right here.
2500.
2500?
I didn't bring copies of mine tonight.
Okay. Page 2.
This is drafts. Yeah, we got a lot of work to do on this one.
The 500,000 isn't real, is it?
No.
You're
That's,
telling-
it's actually highlighted, and you can't see it
Yeah,
in this
it's
is a black and
highlighted,
white
sure.
copy. It's got a big yellow highlight just
So
right
it's
there.
just a number in
There
there.
it is. It was a placeholder right now.
He put a bunch
That number
of X's.
scares me. I mean, that's a 22,000 acre, that's residential
I'll put
pricing.
X's from now on that.
We put a bunch of X's, but then we worry about the quality of end user we're going to get if it's triple X dollar fair market value.
That's true.
So,
Been there-
yes.
Been there, done that.
So,
We
All
won't
right.
need that accounting firm if we
right.
settle for that, because you just need a legal.
So,
We're gonna
yeah,
cross that.
we're, as Ian stated, we're still waiting on appraisals,
Yeah.
on at least the 2, have we ordered them on
Yeah.
1346 too? Okay.
That one you actually have some. Yes, we have ordered them, but you have 2-year-old ones too, so you'll have
Okay.
some baseline for comparison as well.
Okay. So again, as Vince stated, we're going to be formalizing the RFPs into basically, as he said, two, one redevelopment and one greenfield type development type stuff. So the greenfield ones lend themselves more towards design and product and lots of different things. And of course, redevelopment is taking an existing structure and reusing it for something. So while there's similarities, they're not the same thing. So we'll be formalizing those over the course of the next week or so. The big thing I'd have you guys really provide us some input on, and talking to Vince this morning, it sounds like we'll probably have another special session to actually approve the RFPs before they're actually released. But the things I would like you guys to make sure you look at are, specifically on this one, is page 4, letter K, where it talks about what is in the proposal and what they need to explain and how they're going to be doing it. And so the project description, finances, schedule, developer experience, and organizational capacity. And then at the bottom of 5, this is something that I think has not been on previous RFPs before, but is going ahead and laying out the evaluation criteria. And so I've given you some suggestions here, and if you guys want to put more weight on any one thing versus something else, change the numbers however you want. It doesn't have to add up to 100. It's easy when it does because everybody sees it as a percentage, like this is the percent weight they're putting on it. But whatever you guys want to do, whatever you think is most important there, we can change those numbers however you want. So. And then I think the biggest piece of this, and we'll probably run these, Ian and I will scrub these for all the legal and general conditions and things like that. But in the back there, the schedule. So we've actually laid out a pretty aggressive schedule on this. Ian and I did this in his office last week, but the issuance of the RFP, the deadline for the proposals is more than 30 days, which should be enough time for them to put it together. Opening the next day, evaluating in 2 weeks, and then selection of basically the next public meeting. So we've got that set up in a public meeting the way, and we're going to try and make that as consistent as possible. Again, trying to match up to a consistent timeline on our process so that developers understand there's not this limbo of 3 months of what's happening, we don't know what's going on, and making sure everybody's informed all the way along in the process.
So Tim, 2 questions is that, and I think I know the answer to this, is that we could receive several proposals, all of which we could reject.
Correct.
And at that point in time, then we're free to negotiate on our own?
After 30 days.
Okay. And then on appraisals, Ian mentioned we had some 2-year-old appraisals on some of the property. What's the shelf life of an appraisal before you're compelled either legally or practically to do another appraisal?
We think that in the 2 years that have intervened that we should have seen market appreciation, but either way, that was on the advice of counsel there too.
Okay.
Mr. Swintz may know the statutory requirement for that. I don't know. I'm going to put you on the spot. You don't know?
I don't know if there's a...
I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if there's a statutory requirement, but there is sort of a best
But-
business practice that.
And it makes sense if the property's appreciated, sure. Okay.
Mr. President, I can keep rolling unless
Sure,
there's questions.
you go right ahead.
All right. The project at Big Woods, Tim had a chance to touch on it earlier. Just wanted to make mention that their 210 permit, which is the commission's 3-way alcohol beverage permit, will be on the hearing for March 7th with the ATC. If you recall, Mr. President, the commission has one 210 permit in escrow. This will transfer that permit to that end user. It has an accompanying purchase agreement that basically lays out the conditions, what happens if it goes out of business, how they comply with the permit, and the like. So we'll be at that hearing, recommending to the local ATC that it be approved so that they can get open, hopefully in April. That's what they're targeting, is an April open date. But the last 10% is always the longest. So we're cautiously optimistic, but we did want to make sure that 210 public hearing took place prior to April's hearing.
Right. How do you keep track of all that, Ian? In terms of all the permits that have been issued, which ones are, that have any strikes against them or whatever?
You hire a nerd. No, you just got.
I'm just saying.
I think like
Where is that information at?
It's a variety of state portals and databases, and
Okay.
the same stuff that Bob and Jennifer have to troll from time to time to get access to information. The states keeps quite a bit of information on their gateway system. Yeah, I mean, it's just paying attention. And hiring nerds. So the Speedway indoor karting project's also progressing really well. Had a chance to take a tour on the inside. They were pouring the oval track. It's on a 14-degree embankment. So
That's interesting.
yeah, all the way around. It's a trip. The place is going to be incredible. Really looking forward to that getting opened. They're actually taking advantage of one of the town of Speedways. They're taking advantage of the first Main Street three-way restaurant permit as well. So that hearing will also be March 7th. So that project's moving along really well too. Council approved the conditions at their meeting in January.
Great.
Crawfordsville Road Partners Project, the Speedway Marketplace on the south side of Crawfordsville Road and High School Road, is progressing. They have addresses for the site, which you'd be surprised. Getting addresses, probably the hardest step in constructing a commercial development. So we got through that, fortunately.
What is it yet? Do you have an?
So they're going to start going vertical on end users. They have a couple have LOIs, and as soon as those LOIs are signed as contracts, there'll be announcements made on those end users. I just keep pointing people back to the original zoning petition back in 2014. The town who owned the 23 acres across the street and the developer at Crawfordsville Road Partners co-petitioned to introduce CS zoning. CS zoning basically creates a list of approved users and a list of uses and not approved uses. So you might be able to have a quick service restaurant, but not a payday loan store or a fireworks store or something like that. So what I've just kind of referred people back to for the time being has been that zoning petition until they've got these items under contract and they're no longer protected by non-disclosure agreements. However, it's high quality commercial retail development. So those announcements will be forthcoming, though. Project's moving along well. We're also working with the developers to get the Rosner project underway. Tim and I have been working with a prospective office end user in that site. The hope is that if that proposal is selected, then that project's going to be able to move forward relatively quickly. They already have state design release for the construction documents, so they'd be eligible for permits. However, there's a few utility items that we need to address, as well as finalizing the deal with their end user. But after some delays, it's good to see some forward motion on that project.
Ian, if I could jump in there, a couple things with these guys. So on the Rosner building, as he just discussed, per your request, we did issue the letter regarding the parking spaces to them, which we are hoping helps them secure that lease is what they needed from us. So that went out, I think, the day after you guys approved it at the last special session.
Right.
So that went out. And then regarding the Speedway Marketplace out there at Crawfordsville Road and High School Road on the south side, per our work order number 8, David has, and from my office, has reviewed all of the invoices. He's been on the phone with Gillette, who's the contractor. He's actually got a meeting with them on site to review the infrastructure in place on Wednesday at 10:30. And then they'll be going back over to our Crawfordsville Road office to then sit down and go through all the pay apps and make sure everything is in order. At this time, Gillette's pulled off the site. You haven't seen anything working out there because of weather and whatnot, so it's not due to any other reason than cold and snow and wet right now. I did hear there's some utility coordination issues that are still going on, but that's in process with the engineers and the town's utility.
What's the procedure on if David finds something that is questionable in relationship to work that was done and a payout has already taken place?
Yeah, it's a good question because I don't know that there is a procedure necessarily in place for that today. So what will happen, I guarantee, if David does find something, and he's very good at the forensic side of construction accounting, so if he finds something, he'll bring it to Ian and I's attention immediately. We'll obviously engage the Redevelopment Commission in some kind of conversation about how to proceed when that comes.
Right.
So. The bonds trust indenture deals with it a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Typically, though, if you if you overcharge or undercharge for for a specific project-related cost, you can credit that against the project fund.
Good.
So, sorry to interrupt.
And then he'll just say, you know, as far as if everything is in compliance, then at that point in time, then what, each time that they have requests for payment,
Yes.
he's going to verify that the work has been
Correct. So
okay.
moving forward, instead of redoing it at the end, he'll be doing it when they submit the pay application. David will meet with them, walk the site, check quantities, do those things, and then
Okay.
issue an approval or a signature to Ian and Monty, then they can process it through the bond.
How's that going to be different from, let's say, the Wilshaw project? I mean, we've got a big parking garage going in
Yeah, I don't
there
know
and
that it's
everything else.
going to be a lot different than the Wilshaw project. I think the one, I think foreseeable, and again, we're not there yet, but I think the one foreseeable difference could be the fact that while the Speedway Marketplace project is really out on its own, it's kind of self-contained in its own parcel lines. There's not a whole lot going on outside of the boundary lines. The Wilshaw project, of course, is going to be on the corner of 16th and Main, or Crawfordsville Road and Main Street, and so there's a lot of coordination. There's going to be street closures, there's going to be parking lot closures, there's going to be lots of things going on that you guys are going to want at least to know in advance as we work through the project. And so one of the things that we've talked about is when we get there is the point of providing some services to where we would sit in the construction meetings on a weekly basis and be the liaison back and forth between the commission, and then the same type of inspections take place based upon
Right.
the bond budget. And what we talked about in a previous session was making sure that bond budget is laid out and is very clear to both parties and how that changes and how what the process is for changing that in the process of the construction.
Good.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Ian, anything else?
No, the only other item I wanted to touch on is just to kind of follow up. There were a couple of projects that were funded federally by the Federal Highways Administration, where we are eligible for federal cost share reimbursement. We've gone back. Monty and Wendell especially have done a fantastic job going back and pulling federally eligible payments for reimbursement and submitting those to INDOT. We're about halfway through their 45-day review period. Those expenses are actually due back to the commission at 80% of what they initially spent. So an opportunity to bring some positive cash flows
Right.
here in the next 45-day period. We actually have to go through that process twice, though. So it's probably closer to 90 or 100 days in total.
Yeah, just to let everybody know, these are bills that we've paid, and then we are.
Like related to the roundabout project, construction costs, utility costs. Some of it was related to 10th Street relocation, so some of it goes back a few years.
Yeah.
But we've been processing those. Turned that around actually the first week in January. But as you know, waiting for a state governmental agency to reimburse you with federal funds isn't exactly a hurry-up process. So
I can
we're going to
understand that.
continue to try and keep our foot on the pedal on that as much as we can.
Yeah, whatever it gets, just keep us abreast on that, I'm sure.
So that concludes all the items I wanted to report on, unless you guys have any
I have
questions.
one more, Ian.
Okay.
Really is the Wilshaw project. I know we had some questions from the public on it tonight. Just for your guys' benefit, we do have another meeting this Thursday regarding some of the utility issues, and then we're setting up the next meeting, which may already be set up. I have to look at my calendar to negotiate the terms again, kind of those finalizing the terms. They've come back to the table with some bond ideas on how to make the bonds more marketable through the process and how to split them up into A's and B's and different different series. So I think we're getting closer with this. We sent them back. We had a meeting this past week, and they had some conditions and some terms that just didn't make sense and didn't really jive with their original proposal. So we told them to go back to the drawing board and get something closer back to the original proposal, and then come back to the commission in the future. And so, again, that's going to jump into the middle of this process, probably in item 3 there, and we'll start this again where you guys are going to get to see that term sheet, and then we'll go to the LOI, and then we'll go to the EDA, and so on.
Perfect. Okay, good.
What's the JUCO status?
They've been working with our staff and the Department of Code Enforcement just on getting all of their permits ready to get everything in place to start the construction project. Really the same with OMR as well. It's just in those final phases of development review. It's gone through the land use process, which is the longest
The state,
process involved.
the state process.
So both of them have foundation release already. I don't know if they have full-blown design release yet or not, but that's typically the biggest hurdle to getting started, is having the state design release.
Yeah, I've seen JUCOs, they're actually doing foundations over there. I mean, I've seen piles of dirt. Are they digging? Or is that-
Yeah, they under their foundation release, they can do that work. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure tonight if I could tell you if they've got their permit issue for the full site. I couldn't tell
Okay.
you.
Good.
Me?
Anything else?
You know, I just want to add one
Yeah.
more thing, Mr. President. I want to pay a compliment to this commission, bringing Tim Jensen and Veritas Group on to help us manage projects, and especially manage our ongoing initiatives during this transition. It's been a smart move. Tim's doing a good job advising you guys, and he's great to work with. I appreciate him.
Great. Thank you. Good to hear that. And I'm sure London Woody Group will be right there with them.
Soon as when this has less X's in it,
Triple X.
then we'll
we'll
pay
be a
him
lot
compliments.
better.
It's brand new, brand new.
Next, we have the marketing and public relations.
Sure. The commission has decided to take a look at their marketing strategy, and simply put, we've decided that we are going to be responsible and use marketing funds that are efficiently and effectively advancing our economic development projects and strategies, and to make sure that we are continuing to move forward with that, with the events coming up that have already been mentioned, with OMR, with Speedway indoor karting, and Big Woods, and again, those will all be under the premise that the funds that we spend on marketing will be advancing opportunities for and promoting the opportunities we have for redevelopment in Speedway. Lastly, the town's events continue to draw people and keep people in town. The Mardi Gras party went very well. I was unfortunately unable to attend, but I will be at the next event, March 12th, which is the St. Patrick's Day pub crawl, so put that on your calendars, and I will plan to be there and enjoy that as well. And that's about it.
Didn't we pass a motion that we have no ribbon cuttings below 20 degrees?
I've had some,
You know, I thought that was a motion that we had on the table. I don't know if it came out or not, but.
I think we're safe for the next 10 months. I've got that under control,
Oh,
so we're
good.
Unless you're cutting a ribbon tonight, should be fine.
Yeah, really. Next is approval of claims.
Yes.
I'll make a
Give it a
motion,
listen.
I'll make a motion that we approve the claims as submitted.
We got claims that have been submitted by the town clerk treasurer, and I've got a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Bill. Is there any discussion on the claims?
Only question I have you reviewed all the attorney bills?
I have.
So you feel sufficient, feel we should approve them?
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And when was Jones snow removal? When was that?
We had, that was two snows that were earlier in the year, about, and 2 inches each. This isn't something that was recent.
Okay. Just thinking,
Yeah, I
if
know.
the snow hadn't melted yet,
I know.
we're already paying the bill.
No, this is prior for the edit of it. Got a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, motion passed 4-0. And I'll just need you guys to sign, everybody sign the claims, and go from there. Is there any other business come before the commission tonight?
Well, I sent an email to everybody and today, because I researched a bunch of properties. And if you want to know, here's all their tax cards. We had one person that's come to our meeting, asked for money, we approved it. That person pays on the buildings, 2 buildings on Main Street, less than $100,000. Of course, they don't want $100,000 for the building. They want $300,000 for the building. We put in all the streets, all the curbs, all the new sewers, and we increased property values for everybody on Main Street. And these people are still paying the same taxes that they were 10, 12 years ago. One person even assessed for $151,000. This is public record. And they own almost an acre of prime ground, and there is some negotiations going on with them, but they're over $1 million asking. There's another one. There's a building on Crawfordsville Road that came in recently for zoning, and it's assessed for $86,300. If you call that person today, they'd like to have $2.25 for it. I bet they would. Yet they come in for it. I'm saying we need to go have somebody, just on the 10 properties I looked at. Actually, I looked at 11. The 11th is owned by a gentleman that's in the federal penitentiary. He happens to be paying close to $1 million. His property is probably assessed better than anybody. But the other 10 are paying about $26,000 in taxes. If I looked at the reassessments, they should be paying someplace between $70,000 and $80,000 in taxes. I have a real problem with that. As a citizen of Speedway, we pay our housing. If you look at the housing assessments right now in Speedway, they are closer than they've ever been, the assessment versus what the real value is for those properties. Basically, it's being done because they're taken out of the BLC or the MLS. They're looking at comp sales. But when you have these commercial properties, they're not getting there. So I look at it and say, here's $60,000 to $100,000 of taxes not picked up on 10 properties. We could be dealing with the shopping center, a lot of these properties that we need to be looking at. I almost think we need a full-time person going back to Joe O'Connor and saying, look at this assessment. Is this proper? The town has spent the money. The town has improved your property. You're asking for some price that's way out there, and probably they'll get it. But they're not paying fair tax. To me, that's unfair. It's unfair as a taxpayer, also as a person as a commission member, and I know there's a town councilman, that has brought it up to the town council, and I'm coming back, the town council and the commission, we need to look at this. This is serious. We approve all these bills for all these experts. And I ask these experts all the time, do we have the money for it? And what have I been told for the last 7 years? Oh, we got it. No problem. Now I got another set of experts to hire on those experts to make those experts right to tell me. I'm getting confused. And we need it. But I also know that somebody on Main Street that owns property shouldn't be paying $98,000 assessment, and that person's house is raised more money than what that is. And these are commercial properties. Now, I know I'm on a high horse, but this is money that is, I mean, Bill, when you were a policeman, you put guys in jail for robbing the filling station, didn't you? And you probably put guys in jail for $300 or $400 for robbing a filling station, didn't you?
Long time ago.
Yeah. Well, and now your job is in forensic or CSI at AT&T, and you look for people trying to steal from AT&T, right? Mm-hmm. Well, here's people right here. They're not stealing. They're legally getting by with it. But I'm also saying I'm going downtown to the O'Connor's office and raising a red flag. You need to be paying the fair tax. We built the development, and we improved the town Speedway. And everybody says, boy, Main Street is beautiful. I just wish the property owners all understood that. The previous property owners.
I mean, they're not going to willingly pay taxes that they don't have to pay. So let's go fix the problem. I'll go with you.
Okay.
Let's just go do it.
Well,
I don't know how, but
well,
someone will tell
we
me.
have staff people, and I think if we had to hire a staff person, this is money. I called an attorney firm today. Their job is to go out and reassess properties for you when you pay too much money. So I turned them around and reversed it. Would you take on a case to go out and help us to evaluate to get it up? He says, you provide the comps, and I'll go do it. And he said he would do it. And so all of a sudden, this law firm, there's plenty of comps to back up what I'm talking about. But if the taxpayers of Speedway don't get upset about this, I rest my case. But I think the average taxpayer in Speedway would say, you're paying more money on a house than on some of these businesses on Main Street. That's not right.
Well, I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years, and, you know, that was one of our objectives, was to raise the assessed valuation of all properties in our area. And I think that we definitely need to have the assessor's office catch up with where we're at to date, and then have a process involved that can keep residents, business owners informed of where they're at, you know, from that standpoint, to make sure that, you know, everybody is involved in the whole process.
What is the process for that?
I don't, Ian, do you have any insight on that? What the current process is to adjust AV? I know you've had several meetings with the assessor's office.
And we've been talking regularly, just about every other week, making sure that they have the comparable information that they need. You know, in Indiana, your property tax is essentially based on your neighborhood code and what similar sale values are. So sometimes you're between assessments. Sometimes you have to remember that reassessments take place in 1 year and then they're collected essentially 2 years later. So, I mean, some of it's procedural. I wouldn't disagree with you, though, Ron. There likely is. There's always areas that aren't assessed properly. I mean, that's without a doubt. But, you know, the process really revolves more around identifying potential shortfalls and areas that aren't properly assessed, and then working with staff to address those.
Now, you have made a mention here recently that our AV in Speedway has gone up, which a lot of communities have not seen that. And what was that percentage?
About 3.5% between 15 and 16.
And
So it's about $20 million.
so how, is that good?
3.5 is pretty good. Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's not 4, it's not 40, but that's solid. I mean, when you think about a place that essentially has fixed boundaries and a built-out landscape, any growth is possible.
Well, I just look, when I just started pulling up some of these properties, pulled up one, thought, oh, look at another one, and started pulling, look at another one. And all of a sudden, I pull up 10, and 10 out of 10, or, well, 11 out of properties, 10 out of 11 are way underassessed. And, you know, everybody wants to pay the least amount of tax they can. There's no doubt about it. But on the other hand, I think when the guy next door is paying a higher tax, and we see these new ones, and Chuck, when you see $52 million building coming in, they're going to pay a lot of tax. But when the guy's sitting right across the street paying less than $100,000, I have a little problem with that as a taxpayer. So anyway, I'll let the horse go, but on the other hand, I hope we ride that one, because next time they want to take the mic, I'm going to ask them what the taxes they're paying in taxes.
I think, point well taken, Ron, and I think it's something that we need to have a structured evaluation set in place so that we can, as we meet with the assessor's office, that we can address those things, especially just like Ian said, you got to watch the trucks coming down the street. You got to watch. I mean, we don't have enough time, you know, from that standpoint. We're, you know, we got Ian chasing everything.
But I
all
also,
over.
but okay, but let's go back to one other thing.
That's why we need to have somebody. That's their job to do it.
But I go back to just that dirt pile behind Delara. We were told that dirt was going to be used. When I found out what we were going to use it for, I wish that engineer was here tonight, because he told us we were going to build it for the new widening of 16th Street going down 16th Street. That thing ain't going to be built in Chuck's grandchildren's time. What? So we got Mount Rushmore over here. We need to carve pictures of somebody in it. But I mean, and now I see more dirt piles going there. We should not allow any more dirt going on that pile.
Mr. President,
Yes.
fortunately for us, you've got two very capable financial advisors that you've just begun a working relationship with. I can personally attest to the efforts of staff and what these folks can do in evaluating the assessments and proper collection of TIF assessments and AV. So, but I would also caution that we had a conversation this evening that basically says we're working to establish, you know, a starting position, getting our arms around it, so to speak. Crawl before you walk, and then you walk before you run. I do think there's an opportunity here, though, where, I mean, Bob and I did a project like this in Cedar Lake before I came here, and it was very successful. It's a process, and you really need to have a baseline understanding of your position before you can do that. And so when they're saying they're doing due diligence, understand that that is an important and necessary first step to doing the sorts of things, Ron, that you're mentioning.
I totally agree. And it's good to, Bob, you get to hear it live and in person. So that you definitely, we definitely need, I mean, Ron makes very valid points. And I mean, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there that we can take advantage of right off the bat. And we need to move on and go from there. Is there any other business that comes before the commission tonight?
Yeah, Mr. President, one more thing. As part of this whole idea of formalizing processes so that E and I can respond appropriately, if most of you, I think, saw the email today from Mr. Ramian saying that somebody stopped and dropped a note by the clerk treasurer's office that she wanted to sell her property to the Redevelopment Commission located at 4935 and 37 West 11th Street. So what we'd like to do is have the process in place by which every offer or idea is brought to you guys can take action on it, and then we will send the appropriate letter back.
Sure.
So I don't know.
We probably don't need any direction on that this evening.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
worth evaluating. We'll take a look at
Right.
it and get you guys some.
So I'm just reminding everybody we're not asking for direction this evening.
Right.
It's simply that this came in. It's going to be a process by which we put it in front of you at the next meeting, whatever that is.
It could
You
be the
guys
same as what we have with evaluating proposals.
Correct. So
That-
I just
I
want you
mean,
to be aware that it was
yeah.
out there, so.
Good. Anything else? Hearing none, it's 7:10. I'll call for adjournment. This meeting is adjourned.